Hello and welcome to the second installment of the Photoshop file to WordPress theme series on NetTuts Plus. I'm Harley, as you know, and in this screencast we will be doing the CSS and Photoshop files for our theme. Currently it looks like this, which is pretty ugly. And I bet you saw that flash. That's because I recorded it once and the screen recording application crashed, which is a bit of a pain. But you know, I'll do it a second time because I love y'all. Anyway, so this is what it looks like now. We're going to clean it up a bit. Before I start, there's a few changes. Firstly, I've made it all a bit bigger so that you can see what I'm doing as I type instead of me having to zoom in all the time, which probably makes you a bit dizzy. Secondly, we've got about 5 things that I accidentally did in the last screencast wrong. We need to change the class of hero, needs to be an ID. The class of title needs to be an ID. The RSS link actually needs class equals RSS, because otherwise we can't change it to the little pretty image that is the RSS image. And we also need to stick another clear fix underneath the sidebar. So if you have a look at the sidebar div, scroll to the bottom of it, div class equals clear fix, which we'll define in a second. And finally, we need to give the last widget, which is our Flickr images, an ID of Flickr. Whoops. There's a few things I forgot. Okay, now we're set with that. We're going to jump into style.css and get going. Okay, so when I sat down to do it the first time, I figured that I would use clips because, you know, that's a much easier way of, instead of me typing it, which would take forever, I'm just going to drag them and explain what the CSS does. I know that'll be a bit monotonous, but, you know, you can copy it as I go, or you can pause it once I've dragged the clip in to type down, then listen to me explain it. So yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing. Okay, with any site, you need to put some reset. We've just got a very basic font reset so that it's not ugly Times New Roman, and a margin and padding of 0, which will push everything to the side, as you'll see now. And also that clear fix is just so that we don't have to define it later, because I generally always define a clear fix just in case I need it. Alright, basic structure. This isn't going to do much. It's going to make it look still pretty ugly actually, but what it basically does is set the general widths for everything. I explained in the first screencast the structure of what our site will be. Instead of using a wrapper model where everything is... Update. Here is our Photoshop file. Instead of using a wrapper model where everything is within a wrapper, like so, we're actually using a model that grabs each section and puts it 100% across the page, simply because we have these backgrounds that bleed, like so. I actually did this in a client website before, and that's where I figured out the idea. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to have the header section, and then we're going to have an inner section that actually houses the content, and we use a class on the inner so that it's uniform on each section. Now, the only one that doesn't use the inner thing is the container, and that's because this background along here is actually the background of the body. And basically we're going to split this up into 2. We've got content and sidebar. So if you look at the CSS, I explained it pretty much just then. We've got the 100% header, which is this, and the 100% hero. The container, as I said, doesn't actually have to be 100% this time. We're just going to give it some padding of 15 pixels so that it can be 900 in here, plus the little outer shadow here, which is 15 pixels. And the content in the sidebar need to float left and fit into the container. And then the footer bar and the footer are just the little 2 things here. There's a footer bar along there, and then the footer here. And then we define the inner class so that the footer bar, the hero, and the header are all pretty uniform. Okay, so if you save that and refresh, it's actually going to have, you know, it's going to be centered. it's not actually going to look like anything because we don't have any backgrounds yet. But that's what we're doing next. Now I'm going to go through each selector and grab the corresponding image out of Photoshop as I go. Like I said in the first screencast, you can buy this off Themes Forest off iMike's Theme Forest page. It's the URL's there, and it's $6. I'm sure you've got $6 lying around. They did a giveaway for $10, so you must have some left over from that. Throw them a bone. Obviously I've got it because I'm writing the tutorial. But yeah, so basically we're going to be pulling everything out of here. So the first image is background.png, bg.png, which is the body. Now if you remember what I said, the background is going to be this slot here. Well, the little tile thing. So if you zoom in really close, you can actually see that it's a repeating set of columns. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our pointer tool, make sure auto select is selected, which means when you click on it, it goes to that layer. And now we're taken to the background layer. So if you get rid of that, it gets rid of it. Sorry, if you click on the eye, it gets rid of it. So if you grab the marquee tool, and we just need a 1 pixel sample that's 20 pixels wide, because each column is 10 pixels. We're going to copy that, so we go edit, copy, or Apple C, or Command C, whatever, Control C. And we'll go File, New, and it automatically does the dimensions because it's a clipboard, because we copied it. Just go OK, paste it in, and get rid of the background, and then save that as bg.png. Hang on a second. Screencast theme. Alright, we need to create a new folder in our theme folder called images. This also makes it WordPress friendly. And then just save it in there. And if we go back to go back to here and refresh it. Whoops, I forgot to save the style. Refresh it. Yay! Now this is given some background, and so is this, and so is that and that, because we have defined it here with colors there, and anyway, and we've also got our background. Now you can kind of see the layout because there's the content there, there's the sidebar, the hero's looking a bit dull, and the header, but we're getting there. Next up is the header. Now the header is basically, and close that, a section of a shadow which just goes from there to there, but we also need this section here and the corner. So the way we're actually doing this is by having a whole lot of transparent images, because the this color here is actually the same as this color here, so we actually just need the transparent outer shadow to make it look like it's got some depth, like you can see, but it actually doesn't. So what we're going to do is it's actually a layer effect at the moment. So if you click on your pointer tool and click on the layer here, it's main screen, which gets rid of that, and also the drop shadow down the side. If you click on the little effects thing, you can also just get rid of that. What we actually need to do is turn the effects onto its own layer. So if you control click or right click and go create layer, doesn't matter, we are given a layer specifically for our outer shadow. Now at the moment, as you can see on the thumb, it's actually a big black box. We only want the outside bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to Apple click or control click on the layer thumbnail of main screen, which is what the effect came off, and it gives us the selection, and then we're just going to click on the drop shadow, press delete, and now it actually looks empty here, but as you can see on the document there's still that drop shadow. So we're going to go select all, copy it, file new, and the clipboard automatically puts the parameters in. Paste it in there, and we have our perfect shadow. Great, now we need to figure out just how big the header is. So what we're going to do is we're going to zoom in real close. We're going to chuck some guides around the header, just the solid bit, or like the not hypothetical, sorry, the I don't know, figuratively maybe. And we'll grab the ruler tool, which is under the eyedropper tool, because it's a sample test sort of thing. And if you hold down Shift and drag from guide to guide, it actually tells us the height of the header, which is 64 pixels. So we are going to go back to our shadow, zoom in really close, put a guide on top of the shadow, sorry, at the very bottom of the shadow, and put a guide, whoops, not yet. For some reason it's already been put in there, but that doesn't matter. We'll grab our ruler tool and we'll go from the guide, and if you actually watch up here, you can watch it increment as we drag it down. So we want to make it 64 pixels. Ta-da! Now if you've got view snap on, you can drag a guide to the edge of the ruler and it automatically snaps it, which is great, because then we can zoom out, whoops, and select from the top, from the bottom guide all the way to the top of the document, cut that out with Apple X or Control X, and then go File, New, already there for us, paste it in, get rid of the background so that it's transparent, and we can just save it as header bg.png. Save. Okay, you can close that. Next up is hero bar. Now the hero bar is kind of like a bottom border, but okay, let me explain. See this little thick bar going across here? That's the hero bar, but we actually give the hero bar, it's actually part of the hero BG, which is the leafy sort of thing. So all we actually need is this little sample of this little bar that actually will go across behind there and act as a thing. We could use a border, but it'd actually be underneath that, which is what we don't want. So if you zoom in really close, use your pointer tool to figure out what layer it's on, which is a background header/footer. Grab your marquee tool, take a 1 pixel width sample, and it should be 5 pixels high, copy it, go File, New, okay, paste it, and if you zoom in really close, it's actually changed to the same color. So we could save that as herobar.png. Now, if we go back to our reference thing, as you can see, it's got a hero bar now, and we've also got our header image. Great. So, next up, close that. Next up is Hero BG. Hero BG is a little leafy thing and probably the most interesting image on this theme. So if we use our pointer tool to click on the big leaf, it'll show us that it's actually a transparent picture of a big leaf that is using a clipping mask of the header bar. Sorry, header BG, which is basically this part here. So what we're going to do is we're going to select both of them, deselect. We're going to select that layer and that layer, and then we're going to merge them by clicking on this little arrow up here and go merge layers. So now, when it loads, I'm getting a very new computer soon because of things like that happening. We actually now have our little hero BG. So we're going to select all of that, copy it, select all as Apple A or Control A, create a new document, and then paste it in, and we've got our thing. Now, as you can see here, the editor iMac has made a little boo-boo because he's left a little white spot here. So we're going to touch that up by zooming in really close, and we're just going to grab a little sample here, and then transform it by going Apple T or Edit Transform Scale. And we can just drag that across so that it covers it up, press enter, deselect, and if you zoom out, looks pretty perfect to me. Can't see a fault in that, So we'll get rid of the background if you want, it doesn't really matter. We'll save that as herobg.png, and then if you refresh it, it's there. Ta-da! But as you can see, there's actually still no shadow going down here, which is a bit strange. I agree. So I believe that's next. So, alright. Now, as I said before, the inner is generally the one that has a shadow. So like here, header BG, here, transparent outer shadow. Now, as you can clearly see, transparent outer shadow is also used by the footer bar here. I'm going to change that to top, my apologies. And that's because it is basically just a sample that is 1 pixel high that we can repeat vertically as much as we want excuse me, of the shadow. So it doesn't have to be precise because you can change the settings now. We're going to go Apple C, File, New. It says height because that's the height of our selection, but we can actually just change it to 1, paste it in, and if you zoom really close and look on the edge, you can see that we've got our little shadow. Get rid of the background, and it should go transparent, and then save it as transparent outer shadow.png. Sweet. Now if you go back to your reference, it should show up. I have no idea why it's not. PY. Maybe I misspelt it. Transparent outer shadow.png. Save it. I forgot to save it. That's what it was. Fresh? No. Maybe. Yes. Okay. Perfect. There we go. We're given our shadow on the hero, and also on the footer bar here. Now you're wondering, why didn't you just use the transparent outer shadow BG on the container? Good question. Simply because it's easier to, instead of making all of this white, it's just easier to use a background image that is repeated all the way down to here, because remember we stuck the clear fix in here. So basically what it does, if we wanted to put the white background on here, we could, but as soon as it had finished along here, it wouldn't repeat. We'd have to put a clear fix somehow that was, the same height as this, which is a bit complicated. So instead, we just use this. If you can get the background back just by pressing Apple Option Z, or I think it's Alt Shift Z on a PC, I'm not quite sure. We can unlock the background layer and select just a little bits off here, delete them, just a little shadow bit so that it remains transparent, and then you can just save that. Apple Shift S is save as for Macs. I'm sure it's Control Shift S for PCs. And yeah, so we can save that as containerbg.png. And if you save that and refresh the image, we now have a background for our container, which is great. So now all that's left is the footer along here. So we're gonna go to Photoshop and close that, and now we're going to do the same measurement thing as we did with the header. So we'll zoom in real close, go to the bottom, drag some guides in that are the same height as the footer, and we can measure it up. We know that it's 27.33, which will round up to 28 just to be safe. So now if you go back to your transparent outer shadow, zoom in real close, go to the bottom, put a guide on the very top of the shadow, and then drag your ruler up till it goes to 28. Ta-da! And then just drag another guide down till it gets there. And we can zoom out and just select from the pretty much just select what's within the guides, the top guide and the edge of the thing. We cut that out. Apple X, or edit, cut, file new, clipboard's already there, paste it in, get rid of that, and then save it as footerbg.png. And if we refresh that, ta-da, there's our little footerbg. So now that we've got all the backgrounds done, we can move on to the other styles. for the BG. I'll just give you a second to type all this. Pause it now. And pause it now. And pause it now. That's all the other stuff before anyway. Alright. So if we... Oops. Go... Just drag... Okay, so the header is the... Whoops. Close. The header is the section in here, as we defined in the backgrounds. If you have a look, it's basically just a list of links, and it also uses this nice little round effect. So if we go to our HTML, you can actually see that, as I said, we've done a list of links, which is our main thing. So if we go back to style, I will break it apart for you. Okay, that's just pushing it across a bit, the whole list of links. We use the float left method to make these links simply because I'm more familiar with it. You can also do the display inline, but the only problem with that is that if you want to make the A's look like buttons, generally you have to change the margin and padding, which is, for some reason, it's very temperamental when working with that, because, as you know, links are inlines, and you can't necessarily have a block link inside a inline list item, which is pretty weird. So we use the float left method, which is pretty easy to grasp. It just floats all the links next to each other. This spreads it across, and this gets rid of the bullet. We give it a bit of padding and change it to be a light gray. Get rid of the underline and make it 18 pixels high, or the font size 18 pixels. And this is probably the funnest part of this code, because it's the active links and also the hover links. So in our HTML, we define one of them as an active link, and also for hovering, obviously. So if we refresh that, we've got our active link and then our hover, which is all pretty. All right. Now, this uses a CSS3 attribute called border radius, which isn't supported by all browsers, but, like I believe if we open it in Opera, give it a second to load. My poor old MacBook is getting old, soon to be replaced by a unibody MacBook Pro. While that's loading, I'll just explain it. Basically, border radius is rounded corners, pretty much. You can define each one by WebKit border top right radius, which is one of the biggest selectors I think, or the biggest selector I think I've seen in my life, which just does the top right corner. But we don't need that now. So as it's not supported in Opera, it used to be, which is strange, but it's not anymore. It's a big square as opposed to in a WebKit browser, and if I open Firefox for you, then you would see that it is too round because we have the Mozilla engine border radius. Okay. Next up is the hero. Whoopsie. Now the hero isn't really much. We can actually get rid of that hero BG because we've already defined it. The hero basically makes everything capital, pushes across to the right, makes it bold, and makes the home link, which is this, the same color as this. So if we refresh that, my apologies, refresh. Yep, there we go. It's stuck on the edge there like it is in Photoshop. Now the glow effect and the gloss effect is a little harder to achieve, especially on text. There's hundreds of tutorials around the internet that are dedicated to gradients on text and different background images. So I won't cover that here, but you can go find it if you really have to. Otherwise, we can move on to the title. Now, the title is basically, I'll give you a second to copy it down, this part here, so the RSS, read them all, and blog items. Now, we do something peculiar. Notice how now read them all and RSS are on the same line. We actually want RSS to go above read them all onto blog items, as you can see here. It's next to there. So firstly, we need to get the RSS image. So if you use your pointer tool, auto select to click on the RSS image, you can, this time with the marquee, just select around it, make sure you get the whole thing, copy it, create a new document, paste it in, get rid of background, and then save it as rss.png, which we will use now. And okay, as I said, they need to be next to each other, so we float them. Floating the header to, instead of making it a block element which goes all the way across like that, so you can see how it goes across there, we actually float it left, which just sticks it to the side, and then float this left up next to it. And then we use the attribute clear block for the paragraph, or the small, so that it gets stuck underneath. So if you refresh that, perfect. This is just borders and background, so it's light grey with a little border on the bottom. Now you'll notice in the Photoshop document the read them all is green and this is black. That's because in this cute little clip called tidbits we actually define the small color. So what we're going to do is we are going to drag the next clip in, which is the post, and then that shall fix up our post. Now I'm not going to refresh it just so you can see. I told you last screencast what was going on with this. We've split it up into two halves. We've got the bottom, which is this here, and the top, which is basically that. And then we've got the post image here, and then the entry here. So what we're going to do is float them next to each other. Float left and float left. We make the entry 310 pixels, which is basically what this is. I guarantee you, if I grab my ruler out and drag it from one side to the other, it will be 310 pixels, like I said. And the padding here is just to push it off a little bit. Now, the post image has padding instead of a border. This is just a more robust way because sometimes with Firefox, the border, if this was ever a link, gets a bit funny. And yeah, so I just prefer to use that. And then if I need to, I can use I can actually use double borders by creating a padding of 1 and then having another border of 1, which can achieve a very nice effect. Post metadata is the the category and the date. We just make it a little bit darker. We make it bolder, which makes it look darker, which makes it stand out because it's important information. And then all the bottom stuff is just basically making it look white and making sure that it's vertically centered. It's probably the most important thing. And text aligning and aligning it to the right, and also giving the background color. So if you save that and refresh it, we now have a very pretty post. Alright, I believe next up is sidebar. Now, when we coded the sidebar, we used a very peculiar method. You would have thought you'd use divs and nestled divs, but instead we used lists nestled in unordered list, nestled in list, nestled in unordered list. Blah, 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 blah. That is because when we get to when we get to WordPress, the default WordPress dynamic sidebar engine uses unordered lists. So basically, it's going to make it easy as possible to migrate over to that. Now, the border left is obvious. It just gives it a little border along here. We use child selectors because in the Photoshop document, as you can see, nothing has a list item except for the actual content. And if you look at it now, everything has a list item. So we use the direct child unordered list of sidebar that has a child that's a list, and we get rid of that, which is basically the widget, which is this and this and this. And as you can see in the Photoshop document, they want a little bullet instead of hollow bullets. So that is also defined here, list style disk, for Now we use this. We don't actually stick a UL in here like that, simply because A, it'll save milliseconds of loading time, and 2, simply because there's only ever going to be, in this theme, there's only ever going to be one instance of a list item inside a list item. So we use a child selector again to achieve that effect. The link basically gets rid of the underline. It's going to stay blue. That's because later on in the tidbit section, we define the link colors for all links on the website, so that they're uniform. Header 3 is just to make it a bit bigger and to give it a bit of spacing between the widgets below. Now, here's the interesting thing. On the Photoshop document, we've got a 4x4 grid of Flickr images. When we get to WordPress, it's actually a bit of a pain, because the only really simple plugin that I found to implement quickly is actually built with tables, so it's actually very hard. I had a bit of a problem. I never finally got it looking perfectly like this, but we can make it look like this with CSS. So if you look at here, we basically give it a border. We make sure that it stays as wide as 72 pixels. And the height, we should actually make it, we should actually make it width, because then it forces them to all be square. We'll float it left so we can get the grid effect, and this is just some spacing. Now, I believe we have to do, whoops. Now, see how we've got the dots? A little bit of problem solving involved. So, we're going to go above here. We're going to get rid of the disk only for the Flickr list item. So, go Flickr, which is the widget, and then we'll go li, which is the list item within it, and we'll just go list style none. And I believe, hang on a second. Now see how it's pushed across here and it's not flush in line here? That's because it is still on the whoops, we need to make it important, because we've defined up here that it has a list style. We need to get rid of the margin for the images because they're unique and special. So we'll go margin left 0, and it needs to be important because we've also defined the margin left up here. So if you refresh it, now it looks a bit better, but it's still a bit squashed. So we can go to margin left and make it 10 pixels and save it, refresh it. It looks a whole lot prettier, but it's still a bit off. So we'll change that to margin right. Perfect. There we go. Finally, as I said, we just need to clean up the links and also make this green and this green. So I'm just going to grab the little, I'll give you a second to copy that, sorry. Pause it, play it, pause it, play it. Now copy this down, which is basically this here. It's pretty self-explanatory. We give all the headers the same color. We make the small a green and make it bold so it stands out, and we also just change the links on the page to be the same color as headers. So if we save that, refresh it, these are now grey like we want, and the smalls are now green, and the header here, the header here, and the header here are all the same color. Oops, wrong save. Great. Well, that's this screencast. In the next screencast, I have this little WordPress CSS clip, which I bet you're dying to figure out what it is. But you can't yet, because it's not the next screencast. I hope that wasn't too monotonous. I know that CSS can be very repetitive and boring, so I try to make it as quick as possible, because I know you wouldn't want to linger too much. You can pretty much have a look at that. If you want to attempt putting it into WordPress, you can, but I will run you through it next time.